Hi, everybody. I'm Tony Fabrizio with Pinellas County Communications, and we're really pleased you could join us tonight. In a minute, I'll introduce Commissioner Kathleen Peters to make some opening comments, but first, let me explain how the meeting is going to go. After Commissioner Peters speaks, Community Coordinator Audrey Abels will come on and give a presentation about how the county budget works and where your property tax dollars go. After that, we'll take your questions and listen to your comments. We'll provide some directions on how to participate when we get to that part of the meeting. And finally, after the meeting closes, we'll provide a link to a survey that we hope you'll complete. We know there may be other issues on your mind tonight besides the budget, but tonight's meeting will be about the budget. We're going to try to stay on that topic. The meeting is being recorded and we'll make it available in a day or two to anyone who wants to see it. With that, let me bring on Commissioner Peters to make some opening comments. Commissioner?
Good evening, and thank you everyone for coming out tonight. We're so glad you could join us. Back in the spring, many of you told us that you wanted a clearer understanding about the county budget and how it works, and how your tax dollars are being put to use in your community. We made a commitment to come back and share that information with you, and that's exactly why we're here this evening. In just a moment, Audrey will walk you through an overview of the county budget, what it looks like, what it supports, and how it helps deliver essential services to our residents. And then after her presentation, we'll open up the floor for questions so you can ask the questions that you have. With that, I'm going to hand it back over to Tony to get us started. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now we'll go to our presentation. Many of you know Audrey. She's one of our two community coordinators in the South and Mid County for the County Administrator's Office. Her role includes a special focus on the Tierra Verde community. Audrey, you ready to give your presentation?
I am ready. Thank you, Tony. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight, we will be doing a county budget overview. So again, if we have not had the pleasure of meeting yet, hi, I'm Audrey Abels. I am the Pinellas County Community Coordinator for the Tierra Verde area. I wanted to make sure that you all knew that there are a few different ways that you can get in touch with me if we haven't had the chance to meet yet. First off, I have office hours every Tuesday and Wednesday at the Tierra Verde Fire Station from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Additionally, there is the pinellas.gov/Tierra Verde webpage. So with that, that is a community resource that holds project information, my contact information, and a lot of good community resources that I wanted to make you aware of. Lastly, we have the monthly community newsletter. So if you go to the webpage, scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can sign up to receive my monthly community update. So essentially just providing key updates every Friday, last Friday of every month. And additionally, should you have any other questions or ever want to get in touch with me, you can always email me at audreyabels@pinellas.gov. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get us started for tonight's budget presentation. So the first thing that we want to talk about tonight is property taxes. So property taxes from the Tierra Verde area. Of the property taxes paid by the Tierra Verde residents, only 58% of that is under the control of the Board of County Commissioners. So in total, Tierra Verde pays $28.9 million in property taxes. As you can see in this graph here, that is broken up into 4 different entities. So only $16.8 million goes to the county to help provide you services. An additional $10.2 million goes to the school board, $1.4 million goes to the Juvenile Welfare Board, and $336,000 goes to the Southwest Florida Management District. But those are the 4 taxing entities that you will see on your property tax bill. So that $16.8 million actually breaks down in 7 different ways. So it's a combination of 7 different property tax. I'll go into a little bit of what these taxes do in a moment, but I will say, first off, you're going to have the general fund, which is $8.1 million. The unincorporated MSTU tax for municipal-like services is $3.6 million. The Tierra Verde Fire is $2.6 million. The library services is $881,000. Emergency medical services, or EMS, is $1.4 million. The health department is $125,000. And the Pinellas Planning Council is $35,000. So really, there are two different ways that you can think about these taxes. They're categorized as countywide services. So countywide services are paid by all residents of Pinellas County, regardless of whether you live in a city or an unincorporated area. So that is notated here in the blue. So that would be your general fund, your emergency medical services, the health department, and the Pinellas Planning Council. Additionally, as unincorporated residents, you also receive additional services that are only for unincorporated residents and for municipal-like services. So for example, that would be the unincorporated municipal taxing unit, the fire district, and the library services. So now we're going to transition, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what each of these services provides. Starting off with the general fund. So again, all Pinellas County property owners pay countywide general fund property tax. The general fund supports the day-to-day functions of county government. Now we're going to be talking about how that funding is actually spent. So this is a $1 breakdown of the general fund budget for all property owners countywide. So if you had $1 of general fund, this is how it would be spent. 42 cents would go to support the sheriff. That includes operations, personnel, the jail. 24 cents goes to support the general government. So that breaks down. 3 cents of that is invested in redevelopment. 2 cents of that go to support technology. 17 cents of that is set aside for a rainy day as a part of our reserves policy. An additional 2 cents goes to support administrative costs. So for example, external audits or if we needed legal services. Additionally, 7 cents is going to support the constitutional officers. So the clerk of courts, the property appraiser, the tax collector, and the supervisor of elections. 6 cents is then spent on roads, bridges, and infrastructure. And I will add a caveat to that. So 6 cents of the general fund budget is spent towards roads, bridges, and infrastructure. We also put additional funding towards those items through the gas tax and penny for Pinellas. Additionally, 6 cents is spent on health and human services, 4 cents on facilities maintenance and leasing, 2 cents on parks and conservation, and then 1 cent is spent to provide court services, the medical examiner, animal services, the county attorney's office, code enforcement and development review services, the safety and emergency services radio system, 5 internal service departments, so that would be like county administration, the Office of Management and Budget, communications, and then 1 cent is spent on other services. So now we're going to talk about the unincorporated municipal service taxing unit, or MSTU, services. So again, these are municipal or city-like services for the unincorporated areas. So a $1 breakdown of the MSTU budget for all property owners in unincorporated Pinellas breaks down as follows. I will start off with the caveat that you will notice that there are 2 items here in blue. Those 2 items are solely supported by fee-based revenues. So what that means is you pay for the service. So for example, if you need a building permit, you pay to utilize that service. We did want to go ahead and list it here because these are services that you do get as an unincorporated Pinellas County resident. So 55 cents is going to support law enforcement. That is specifically the local patrol presence. 25 cents is going to support stormwater facilities management. 8 cents for building permits. 4 cents for development review services. 3 cents for code enforcement. 2 cents for the property appraiser and tax collector. 1 cent goes to support the local road program, parks and conservation, and any future land use planning. An additional tax would be the fire district tax. So what do they do? So the fire district provides fire and suppression services to the Tierra Verde residents. It is controlled by Lilman Fire with oversight for funding from the Board of County Commissioners. Next, we have the library services. So they provide library access and support to all residents of unincorporated Pinellas County. So for example, as a resident of unincorporated Tierra Verde, you could walk into the St. Pete Beach Library and get a library card even though you're not living in St. Pete Beach. So that program is controlled by the Public Library Cooperative Board with funding oversight from the BCC. Next, we have the Emergency Medical Services that provides ambulance and paramedic services to the area. Again, that is controlled by the Board of County Commissioners. The Department of Health provides clinical services, which include child health, maternity, family planning, infectious disease services, and the school nursing program. It is controlled by the state, but it does have some funding coming from the Board of County Commissioners. And then lastly, we have the Pinellas Planning Council. So they provide county-wide land use and transportation planning services within Pinellas County. They're controlled by the Pinellas Planning Council Board, again with funding oversight from the BCC. So those are the 7 different taxes and the services that are provided. Next, we want to talk about the historical countywide general fund millage. So a millage rate is the tax rate used to calculate your property taxes. So the way that would work is you would take the millage rate, multiply it by your taxable value, municipal taxable value, minus any exemptions you would have, and then divide that by 1,000, and that gets you your property taxes. So this chart displays the general fund tax rate over the past 5 years. As you can see, throughout this period, the Board of County Commissioners has either kept it the same or lowered it. The most recent millage rate was passed in September of this year, and it is the lowest that it has been since the 1990. Next, we wanted to let you know about capital improvement projects. So a capital improvement project, or CIP, is a major long-term investment in physical assets that improve or extend the useful life of infrastructure. So the majority of CIP funding comes from the Penny for Pinellas. The Penny for Pinellas is a voter-approved 1% sales tax that pays for our community's long-term needs. So it is paid for by residents and also by visitors. As you can see in this chart, CIP tends to vary year to year depending upon the 6-year plan. So as you can see, we had a spike in 2024, and that is due to the canal dredging. Over the next 6 years, the county is planning to spend a total of $23.9 million in the Tierra Verde area. $10.2 million will go to the Sands Point Bridge replacement, and $13.7 million is going to go towards the Madonna Boulevard Bridge replacement. Lastly, we wanted to talk to you about what are some of the services that you can expect in FY26 in Tierra Verde. So you will get all of the countywide services, all of the unincorporated services that we've talked about, and additionally all of the penny funding. So we're going to spend $15.3 million of the penny in Tierra Verde in the next year. Additionally, we have $321,000 going towards the Tierra Verde Community Park. That is going to help us replace the playground out there. $67,000 going towards county medians to help with the basic level of service there. And then an additional municipal service taxing unit grant that nonprofits can apply for will be $20,000 to help support. So again, please, if we have not had the pleasure of meeting yet, connect with me at office hours. If you have not checked out the website, I would highly recommend that you check that out. And tell your neighbors about the community newsletter if they haven't heard about it yet. The more people we have on there, the better. And with that, I am going to kick it over to Tony.
Thanks, Audrey. Amy Davis is our other community coordinator for the South and Mid-County, and Ashley Giovanetti works with me in communications. So now we will move into the Q&A portion of the program. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Zoom, if you move your cursor to the bottom of the screen, you'll bring up a toolbar that includes the Q&A icon and the raised hand. The toolbar may be at the top of the screen if you're on a mobile device. You'll have 3 ways to ask a question or offer a comment. First and easiest, you can type a question into the Q&A box. Ashley will read them as they come in, and Audrey or Amy will answer them. Second, you can click on raised hand to be placed into a queue to be called on to talk. And third, we don't appear to have anybody who phoned in, but just in case there is, you can press *9 on your keypad to be placed into that same queue to speak. We are going to try to avoid answering questions that have been asked and answered. And if you do request to speak, we ask that you hold your comments to about 2 minutes so we can get to everybody within our allotted time. With that, Ashley, I think we're ready to get started.
Well, we do not have any questions in the Q&A box at this time. But if anyone has any burning questions, feel free, again, to drop them in. We are here for you, here to answer those questions. Oh, I just had one pop up from an anonymous attendee. So $3.6 million is collected in Tierra Verde MSTU taxes. How many of those dollars come back to Tierra Verde? 408,000 more? Also, would it be correct to say none of the CIP funding for the bridges comes from Tierra Verde property taxes? I'm happy to repeat that again. I know that was a lot.
Yeah, so we'll tackle the first part of that question. So to your first question of the $3.6 million that is from the unincorporated MSTU, how much of that comes back to Tierra Verde specifically? We do not budget that way. We don't track the budget by the geographic area. It's just not how our municipal system is set up. So there's no definite answer. I will say we are committed to that 408,000, so that absolutely will be coming back to the area. In addition to the other services that are provided as well that you can utilize.
What you can say though is from your previous presentation, about 55% of that comes out of for the sheriff patrol, correct?
Yes. Yep. So 55% of that goes to the sheriff again, and then 25% goes to support surface water. So all of that, those services are being utilized.
And then that second part of the question with the CIP or the capital project funding for the bridges, that does come out of the penny for Pinellas. We have separate capital funds for those type of projects. And so it doesn't come out of the Tierra Verde property tax.
Okay, moving on to the next question, coming from Corinne. Will the presentation be provided in the monthly newsletter?
It will be linked on the county website, so pinellas.gov/Tierra Verde, which I can highlight in the monthly newsletter as a reminder.
The next question we have is from Carol. How many other unincorporated areas pay for their own lighting?
So in Pinellas County, street lighting is not a service that we provide. So in order to provide, well, basically all unincorporated areas have to provide their own street lighting. That's not a service that the county provides. It is completely done by street lighting districts.
And those are all the questions I have in the Q&A box at this time. But feel free, again, here to help answer your questions regarding the budget in Tierra Verde.
Once again, folks, if you hover your pointer at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see, you'll see a Q&A box with a question mark in it. That's where you can type in your question. You'll also see a raised hand there. If you click on that, it'll show us a raised hand and we can unmute you and allow you to make a comment or ask a question. We have time. We'd love to hear from you.
And you can make the question from an anonymous attendee. So you do not have to put your name in there.
Looks like we have one, Ashley.
Yes, we have a question from Barbara. What services are included in the $67,000 for medians?
So the $67,000 goes to support the basic county level of service, and that's a great question. So the basic county level of service for mowing is just that, only mowing, and it's 14 cycles per year, so 14 times per year. That is what the $67,000 goes to support.
And just to add on that, that's for all county-owned medians.
Yes, thank you.
I have another question from Carol. Can playground money be used for more mowing, etc.?
The money that we've committed for the playground has already been budgeted in our parks department, so that wouldn't be utilized for mowing. If the community wants to see an enhanced level of service for mowing, so they want to see more mowing, we'll have to find a funding source to be able to do that, because that's not a service that the county provides. We only provide the basic 14 levels, and then anything above that, it would have to be funded differently. And that's for any unincorporated area.
And Audrey, well, you mentioned that you're working with TVC8 and others in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. So to that point, we are currently in talks with TVCA to potentially add in some extra enhancements, as they've seen some of their residents would like to have those again. Additionally, we've identified a nonprofit partner, and we're exploring that as well. So we do realize that it is something that the community wants to see, and we're trying to come up with some creative solutions to get that out for you guys.
I have an anonymous question. Can you please clarify if your cost management process covers cost expenditures by specific location?
So I believe that the question is asking, do we track specifically by the location? That is not how the county budget is set up. It is set up at the service level. It's not being done at the
function.
geographical level. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question from Philip. What has been the experience with liability issues for county playgrounds?
That I am not familiar with. That is something we would have to get with our parks department and come back to you with a question, unless Barry, you have an answer for that.
Basically, for our county parks, then there are playgrounds, and so we carry the liability through our countywide insurance. And Chris Rose is on here. I see popping in there. I don't know what our experience level is, but that's also the reason that we put money into keeping the playgrounds up to a maintenance code, and the reason that they're doing enhancements to this one to make sure that they're safe, and that we're doing everything we can, and that obviously reduces our liability.
Chris, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Completely everything that's been said is correct so far. We should also say the county is self-insured, so we do have to pay out when these things happen. We do work to make sure that our playgrounds are up to speed so that there are not injuries that we would later have to pay out for. Same thing with sidewalks, curbs, other things like that. So no, everything that's been said has been correct.
Ashley, we do have one raised hand from Carol. Carol, I'm going to unmute you, and you can unmute yourself and ask your question or provide your comment.
Who makes the decision that we need a playground?
So to that point, Carol, it's kind of what we were describing earlier. The current playground is it's in need. It's reached the end of its useful life, and as a part of that, we have to find a way to mitigate that risk. So as such, that has been the determining factor for the replacement of the playground.
And we have another question in the chat from an anonymous attendee. How do you control project expenditures if not by specific projects?
Projects are managed, okay, but they're not managed by geographic area. So if you're gonna build a road, we have all kinds of cost controls, bidding, engineers' estimates, et cetera, and stuff that controls and manages those projects. It's just what the question I think before was really about. How much is coming back to the specific Tierra Verde area? Well, again, you got sheriff patrol. That's a majority of the cost between the sheriff control and your stormwater. That's a majority of your cost. Well, those go up and down based. Like the sheriff's cost is pretty consistent for an unincorporated area, but then you may have capital expenditures in stormwater that vary based upon when cycles of maintenance are and things like that. And so it's not broken out by specific geographic areas. We budget those for all unincorporated areas, and then Public Works manages those on a countywide basis.
There's a follow-up from the anonymous attendee. They said, to be absolutely clear, how do you control costs for specific projects that you manage?
We have an entire capital improvements team in Public Works that manages projects every day all over the county. So they go from everything from managing the engineering to the construction and estimating to the bidding to having on-site project engineers to manage the contractors that are performing the work, the inspections during that time, the follow-up and close out of a project, and the budgeting that goes along with that. So we have so if we have a capital improvement project, it has an engineer's estimate, it has a budget, and it is controlled through that specific capital improvement project budget.
Carol, I see that Carol unmuted herself. Carol, did you have a follow-up question?
Yes. I'm still not feeling that I'm getting an answer about who makes the decisions on the fact that we get a playground and what's happening with the ballpark. Is there money being put in aside for the ballpark? And
yeah, so that is budgeted within our Parks Department, Carol. So $321,000 is going to support the maintenance. $210,000 of that is to replace that playground. But additionally, it's going to be maintained as is. So they'll do the mowing. But as far as adding improvements to the ballpark or, reclaying the area, that is not something that we're planning for in the budget. We are just maintaining the area.
Maybe I can expand on that. And I'm Barry Burton. I'm the county administrator. So we don't do recreation. There's another thing that we don't do in the unincorporated areas: recreation. We don't have recreation services anywhere. Not in Palm Harbor. Not in Eastlake. They had separate taxing jurisdictions that were created for their recreation services. So out there, you have a ballpark that was requested. The community wanted it. And so now we'll maintain it. So we'll mow the grass. But it would be up to the community in terms of use. It'd be first come, first serve. And we're going to make it to where it's not a liability issue, somebody getting hurt, the fencing or whatever. But there's no programming that goes along with that. The same way you have tennis courts, you got money last year to be able to make improvements, tennis or pickleball or whatever it is, but it'll be come first serve because there's nobody to manage it. We don't have a recreation department anywhere in the unincorporated areas.
And I think that goes along with the question from an anonymous attendee that just asked, given the response regarding the playground and the questionable use of the ballpark, would consideration be given to convert those areas to something more useful to the community?
We are always looking for community input. So if you have an idea for something that you would like to see in the area and it's something that, it's a possibility, it's a service that we provide, we could absolutely look into that. I would encourage you to reach out to me and kind of talk through that, what some ideas are, and then we can bring it to the community if that's, the community's need or want.
And I did want to mention that in addition to County Administrator Barry Burton, we also have Office of Management and Budget Director Chris Rose with us tonight.
We have a couple other questions. One from William. William asks, do you have an estimated completion date for the Sands Point and Madonna Bridge?
The Sand Point Bridge replacement is starting actually this month, and it is estimated construction completion of 2 years. The Madonna Bridge replacement is going out for bid right now, so that construction is set to begin in the beginning of summer, and then it again will be 2 years roughly.
And another question from LS. Can you please describe how you control costs, budget versus actual for each project?
Chris, I will let you answer that question.
Sure. Thank you for the question. Not just projects, but the entire budget. We work hard to make sure that we're careful and we're prudent in the things that we spend on. We actually challenge each of our departments to keep their expenditures low, thereby making sure that we can keep our property taxes and any taxes or fees that we charge as low as possible. Sometimes there are things that are outside of our control. There are sometimes unfunded mandates from other governmental entities that we simply have to pay. They're like anyone else. We've experienced inflation inside the county that we have had to absorb and adjust to as we go forward. So my team in the budget office, at the direction of the county administrator and the Board of County Commissioners, we dig in with the departments and make sure that the expenditures are as low as we can possibly get them every year.
Let me add to that a little bit. So we kind of went off, and Audrey was giving a presentation on the budget, but this might be a good time to kind of frame this. You know, we had conversations earlier this year, and it really kind of sparked the need for enhanced communication with Tierra Verde residents. That was the assignment of Audrey down here. And to have more connection in the newsletter and ways of trying to even explain how we do business. And so, you know, I mean, it is important because that's something that we probably don't do as good a job as we could. Commissioner Peters is on this line. I will tell you, since the day she got elected, so which was the same day I come in as a county administrator, she's pushed hard at reducing the property tax rate. And what that means is, you know, we have fixed costs. You can't lower sheriff's costs, right? I mean, each year it's a people business, and they get a raise, and they're not as competitive as what St. Pete and Tampa and others pay. And so, you know, that cost continues to go up. There's very little room, you know, to kind of reduce that. What we've done in the Board of Commissioners, the departments that report to the Board of Commissioners, is as we've had hyperinflation on all of our goods and services and the things that we do, we've actually said, departments, you got to find efficiencies to eat those costs. And so I think it was last year, we had the Board of Commissioner departments went up by 0.1% overall in the BCC departments. And so we've worked really hard at trying to control that cost. Sometimes we're more successful than others, depending upon what those inflationary factors are. But we worked really hard. We have fewer people working for us today than we had 7 years ago. And so we continue to try to work hard at trying to control the costs. But it has been a difficult time, you know, to manage budgets, just like you know, at home and trying to manage, you know, with the inflationary costs that's hitting you without your revenue sources going up. We have worked really, really hard. And believe me, the Board of County Commissioners has pushed extremely hard to say we have to reduce our costs, to reduce our property tax. But again, like with the sheriff, there's certain areas where it's easier to do than others. And so, but that is something that we take as front and center each and every year.
I don't see any questions, any other questions in the Q&A, but I do see Carol has her hand raised again.
Okay, Carol, hang on one second.
Okay,
I just unmuted you. Go ahead. Okay.
Yeah. For the people who are still on and listening and trying to understand what's happening in Tierra Verde now, we had a meeting with Pinellas County, and the people who came were very negative about the way it was presented. But I think if they listen to what was talked about tonight, they realize that we get basic. We're basic. We're paying money for basic services to the county, and that's it. If we want anything else, if we want our community to be better, then get involved with Next, get involved with trying to plan for a better Tierra Verde. And the way we do that is going to have to be to raise the money ourselves. So think about that. I think if you present it as a tax, it's probably a negative. If you present it as raising money to help ourselves, maybe it's a better approach. But that's not the way the county calls it. Also, I do have a question about property taxes. If property taxes are eliminated, how does the county plan to fund this? Thank you.
We have no idea. Obviously we're going to watch what happens at the state. There's a lot of different bills that are floating around at the state. Some suggest raising a sales tax, or other things, but we really don't know how that's going to play out. I mean, these are basic services. The sheriff is funded with property tax. How do you fund a jail without revenue? I mean, so that's going to be a big conversation over this next year.
We have another question in the chat from Barbara. Can Fort DeSoto fees be used for local purposes? For example, repairing the Bayway median? And if those are not sufficient except for the park, can the fee be raised $1 to fund that purpose?
So Audrey, you go ahead.
So the Fort DeSoto fees go to support the actual Fort DeSoto park. So for example, last year it cost us $4 million to run that park, and we only collected $3.6 million in revenues to support that park. So it's not supporting itself enough to be able to utilize any of that funding. Additionally, I will say that the Bayway is a state-owned highway system. So it is not our infrastructure, and as such, we typically would not put any funding towards it. The only reason that Pinellas County has become involved with the Bayway is historically it helped the Tierra Verde Community Association get a grant. In order to get that grant, we had to provide, we had to be the pass-through, essentially, for the state for that. So typically, we don't do that sort of thing, and for a state highway system, it's not something that we would do.
And Audrey, for Fort DeSoto, there might be years where we do, equal revenue, or maybe we collect a little bit more revenue than expenditures, but that's all part of the countywide park system. So any revenues that are in excess of the expenditures that particular year would go towards the countywide system of parks.
And the issue with the Bayway is we have lots of county roads that go to municipalities, go to the beaches, go everywhere, and we always get requests for enhanced levels of service. Okay, the hotels are over here, and so that's the reason people come here. So you should put more money into beautifying that. And so we say, well, then, that's got to have a revenue source to go with it, because that's the reason we standardize the level of service on the county roads. And the Bayway it's not even a county road. And so regardless of the revenue, we wouldn't take it out of the county budget, because that is a state road. And we're trying to maintain services within our parks. We've got a lot of unmet needs within our parks and within the county services in general. So
continuing on the Fort DeSoto topic, Corinne asks, why isn't this roadway to Fort DeSoto a county road?
It's state created and state maintained. That is the history of that.
I don't know the answer to that.
And that is all the questions we currently have in the chat.
It's a state road also tied to that bridge, which is a state-owned bridge. Mm-hmm. The causeway going over. So the state's the one that put the road in, and therefore the state owns it. And they have not asked us to take it over, nor I don't think have we asked them to take it over.
Yeah, we're in a deficit on our roads. We're trying, just like with the bridges that we're going to be doing in Tierra Verde. The county commission, in addition to reducing your property tax rate, has actually shifted additional property tax dollars. We have 3 different increments that go over to our transportation trust fund, which is what we use to repair our roads and repair our bridges. And so just a few years ago, we had over I forget the number, over 1,000. No, I'm gonna get the numbers wrong. We had a significant deficit in the number of our roads that were, I think it was over 1,000 miles that were in a failed condition, in a D or an F condition level. We have less than 300 now because the county commission recognized we need to put more. So in addition to reducing that property tax rate, we've also taken additional dollars for the cuts that we talked about, where we've reduced our cost and shifted that over to infrastructure because the importance of maintaining our bridges and stuff. We had to weight limit bridges around the county because there was such a deficit, 6-7 years ago, where we had to weight limit bridges because of the lack of maintenance. And so we've been working for a long time to try to get to eliminate that backlog to where our bridges and our roads are properly maintained. It's still going to take us years more, but we're making headway in doing that. But that's where so and the reason I tell you that is we wouldn't want to take over an additional state road. We're trying to make up for just maintaining our current roadway and bridge network.
Kind of on the same path, from an anonymous attendee, we got the question, FDOT did contact Pinellas County to ask to have the county take over the Bayway and even offered to kick in money to refurbish the median. Why does our commission not know that, and why did the county not accept?
They wouldn't accept additional roadways because regardless of they give us a little bit of money, I mean, we would have to then maintain it. We would have to repair it. We would have to resurface it. And we have a deficit within our own road network. So we're not going to take on additional cost associated with that because that, again, would add to that deficit that we are trying to maintain. And it still wouldn't go back to addressing the issue. The issue with the Bayway is that you want enhanced levels of service on the maintenance. So if the county took over the maintenance, we still would cut it the 13 or 14 cycles a year. That doesn't address the underlying issue of the complaints on the Bayway.
Ashley, do you see the question that's in there?
Yeah, we have one other question. It's a little unrelated from the budget, but we have been talking about the roadways. After Bunces Pass, does the road become county? So I think they're asking, does it become a county road after Bunces Pass?
Didn't answer that. Commissioner, do you know?
I think when you get to the toll plaza, it may become a county road because you're entering the park, but I'm not sure. We'd have to talk to Paul Kazi and get the details because I'm not positive on that. But it would make sense because that toll, I'm not sure who owned that toll. If the state owned the toll, then the state would own it up to that toll, and then the county may own it after. But I don't have the history on that.
Well, maybe if we post this, Audrey, you could look at that and provide an answer in the follow up.
Yep, I will do that.
The comment said the park entrance. I think Commissioner answered that.
Don't have any more questions in the chat. I do not see any raised hands.
There are no raised hands. No. We'll give it another minute or two if anybody wants to, throw a last minute question in.
So what I would say for the people that are still on is definitely for any suggestions you have. I mean, we did try to brainstorm, last year to come up with some solutions for you, and not realizing the HOA fees, because all our other incorporated areas that use an MSTU don't have an HOA. And when we started talking about it, we hadn't considered that, and that was a mistake on our part, that we hadn't considered that you were paying an HOA fee. In addition to many of the townhouses that are paying HOA fees, it just wouldn't have made sense to do an MSTU. But we're always open to some creative solutions. So definitely follow up with Audrey and her office hours, or even on an email. And don't just assume that we would have blinders on or closed ears. We definitely want to do the best we can at coming up with creative ideas. And, we've got some are already batting around, and you all may have even better ideas. So definitely follow up with Audrey, and we'll see if we can come up with some good creative solutions.
At this time, we have no other questions or comments, and we are going to close the meeting out. Thank you to all of our participants, including Commissioner Kathleen Peters, County Administrator Barry Burton, Audrey with her presentation, and thank all of you for joining us. Again, Audrey keeps office hours at the Tierra Verde Fire Station twice a week. Her hours are posted on the community website, pinellas.gov, Tierra Verde. You can also email her to set up an appointment outside of her regular hours. As I mentioned at the top of the meeting, we're going to leave you a survey link after the meeting closes. It's an easy 1-minute survey, and we would really appreciate your feedback. Thank you again for giving us your time tonight, and have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.